Dogs with blue fur, giant mutant fish, shadowy flying creatures, and ghoulish figures on Google Images. These are unexplained things caught on camera in Chernobyl. Well, I don't like this image. It'd be creepy enough on its own, but what makes it even eerier is that it comes from the abandoned amusement park in Pripyat. TikTok user Arian Leonol was scrolling through Google Maps images of Pripyat's abandoned fairground when he noticed this figure in one of the images. And man, is it creepy as hell. Something just looks wrong about this person. The black eyes, the paleness, I want to say ghostly. Of course, it could just be the camera snapping images from far away, low quality, etc., but still makes you wonder who this person is. The exclusion zone is, as the name suggests, officially off limits. People still sneak in on occasion, but not often, and it's just a risk I'd never want to take. The images you're looking at here have not been doctored. For some reason, these dogs have blue fur. In October 2023, volunteers working inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone started sharing something they couldn't explain. Stray dogs living near the ruins were being spotted with bright blue fur. Not patches, not stains on their paws, entire coats tinted this unnatural, almost electric blue. Photos and video quickly spread online, and people immediately started asking the obvious question, why? Well, the dogs were seen near the industrial areas of the zone, places filled with abandoned buildings and decaying equipment and substances that haven't been touched in decades. No one could say for certain where the color came from. Some said they may have rolled around in some sort of chemical. Others pointed toward old materials left behind after cleanup. And of course, many people wondered whether living in the most irradiated place on Earth may have had something to do with it. It's hard to say. Radiation isn't really known to turn fur blue, but how often are we really testing long-term exposure to radiation like this? I don't know, I feel like weird stuff can happen over time. The darker frog in this picture has been affected by radiation. In 2016, Spanish researchers Pablo Barrico and German Arizola were surveying wildlife in Pripyat, trying to understand how animals were surviving in an environment still affected by radiation. And that's when they noticed something that didn't make sense at first. The frogs were black, and not just dark green, almost charcoal black. That was strange because the species they were studying, Hyla orientalis, is normally a bright, almost neon green tree frog. That bright color is one of its defining traits. Seeing entire populations with much darker skin raised some questions. It's pretty obvious that this has something to do with nuclear fallout. These frogs now produce higher levels of melanin, the same pigment that helps protect human skin from radiation and UV exposure. So in the Chernobyl zone, it seems like these frogs have developed a kind of biological armor, helping shield their cells from damage. It's really amazing how quickly this happened. In just a few decades, a species known for being bright green has adapted to being much darker to survive inside of one of the most hostile environments humans have ever created. Footage from inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone shows a catfish so large it barely looks real. Hauled up from one of the abandoned cooling pods by angler and TV host Jeremy Wade, these pods sit just outside the ruined reactor complex, and they're still contaminated decades later. When Wade tested the fish, the radiation readings came back super elevated, around 16 times above normal background levels, and stuff seems to be happening to these fish that fits into that classic comic book idea that we have of, what happens when radiation affects animals. They're extra big. Is it just the radiation though? Well, I gotta imagine partly, but there's also something else going on here. The ponds are warm and they're packed with food. There are no natural predators left. So it's turned the area into quite the feeding ground for these catfish. They're at the top of the food chain now, with nothing to hunt them and no reason to compete. They survive longer, they eat more, and they just keep growing. Still, radiation is partly to blame. They're absorbing it daily, and scientists aren't sure what long-term effects that exposure may cause down the line. This image is believed to be the only photographic evidence of a creature people later named the Blackbird of Chernobyl. In the weeks leading up to April 1986, people living near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant began telling each other some unsettling stories. They described this huge shadowy figure gliding through the sky. It had wings, but was almost human-shaped too, and its eyes glowed red in the dark. As the reports spread, the sightings became more frequent. People claimed to see the creature circling overhead and hovering near the plant. People started waking up from terrible nightmares and were overcome with this deep sense of impending doom. And then, on April 26th, Reactor 4 exploded, and what followed was catastrophic. A radioactive cloud swept across large parts of the Soviet Union and into Europe and North America. Entire towns were emptied. More than 300,000 people were forced to leave their homes, many never returning. It became the worst nuclear disaster in human history. In the days after the explosion, Soviet helicopters flew non-stop, dumping sand and debris onto the burning reactor. Firefighters rushed in without knowing what they were truly facing, and many would die shortly after from radiation exposure. We all know the story, but what gets talked about a lot less often is the Blackbird, which lingered the entire time. Some of the responders who survived long enough to speak later claim they saw that same massive winged figure flying through the radioactive smoke above Reactor 4. And then, just like that, the sightings stopped. Some believe the Blackbird of Chernobyl is similar or possibly even the same creature as Mothman, reported in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, shortly before the Silver Bridge collapse in 1967. Both were described with huge wings, glowing eyes, and showed up just before disaster. Skeptics have said people may have been seeing a black stork. Big birds, for sure, but its wingspan doesn't come close to what witnesses described here. Whatever people saw around Chernobyl in 1986 was never reported again. Whether it was a misidentified bird or something far stranger, it's impossible to say. But if stories like these are to be believed, when it appears, catastrophe is not far behind. This image was taken in 1989, 3 years after the Chernobyl reactor exploded. It's pretty shocking. A woman holding up an interesting looking piglet. There's no fur, misshapen head. The image was captured in the radioactive fallout zone at a time when the ground, water, and feed were still soaked in contamination. Farmers living near the exclusion zone reported animals being born dead, deformed, or dying within hours. Some stopped reporting it altogether because no one wanted to come investigate anymore. You'd think there would be more images like this from Chernobyl, but there actually aren't many. If the disaster happened nowadays, there'd be video documentation out the wazoo, but unless you were a journalist, you probably weren't going around taking pictures, especially because the government was trying to downplay how bad things really were. This is honestly some pretty harrowing footage. This was taken right inside Reactor 4, or what's left of it. And that awful mass of goo is what's known as the elephant's foot. The elephant's foot is one of the most famous things left over from the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. It's this huge melted lump made from the reactor's fuel, concrete, steel, and other material that got so hot it all just fused together. It's called the elephant's foot because it's wrinkled and looks kind of like a giant elephant's toe. It formed in a corridor under the reactor. When people first saw it a few months after the accident, it was extremely dangerous. The radiation was so strong that standing near it for just a few minutes could have killed someone. Workers had to use remote tools and special gear just to measure it safely. At the time, it was so hot and radioactive it almost seemed alive. Over the years, the radioactivity has gone down as some of the unstable materials broke down, but it's still deadly and now sits under tons of rubble inside the huge containment structure built over Reactor 4. Finally, we have another Google Maps TikTok video for you. TikTok user hidden on Google Earth was scrolling through Google Maps when he spotted something weird inside one of the abandoned buildings in Pripyat. Zooming in, he noticed what looked like a person sitting or standing in the window, pale and cloaked. Obviously, no one's supposed to be in that building. People online kind of freaked out, calling it a ghost, while others said it was probably just a statue. But it's pretty creepy, the way it's reaching out like that, and it does kind of look like a statue, but maybe it isn't. What if this was some lone person in a cloak roaming around? Who are they? Why were they there? And that has been the video for today. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.